ED. And just to move on to the next slide, Hannah. I'm your chair today. As already indicated earlier, thank you all for joining in this session and today's session of Momentum on ECD. My name is Annie Chipeta, and I have just recently joined Able Child Africa in the UK office as a programs officer. I will be working as a programs officer closely with our partners across Eastern and Southern Africa to deliver disability inclusive projects. Thank you. And in terms of just accessibility reminders for today's session, we do have our sign language interpreters. We do not have sign language interpreters for this event, but we do have closed captions enabled. So that should be that. And just to take us all through today's agenda, we've already had our welcome and introduction by today's chair, myself. And also I will shortly be introducing each of our panelists. And then we will go through pre-prepared questions for 35 minutes, where each of the panelists is going to give us some in-depth or brief view of their perspectives and experience on that. And then we will end and have a wrap-up. And just to, before we present the panelists of today, just to give an overview, today's event is going to explore on the importance of ECD and inclusive play, and how those that miss out on inclusive ECD are affected. And we're also going to look at the various challenges and successes that are there in this sector in terms of bringing about early childhood development programming. And so at this juncture, I should allow the panelists to introduce themselves. As the chair, Annie Chipeta, Programs Officer, Able Child Africa, I will now bring it over to you, Chris, if you're ready, just to give a brief introduction of yourself, who you are, what you do in regards to this sector.
Thank you very much, Annie. I'm Christopher Mtadi Manja, working with FEDOMA as a project manager for the inclusive ECD project that FEDOMA is carrying out in partnership with Able Child Africa. Basically, I am responsible for the day-to-day implementation of the program at FEDOMA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And Lily, if you could please give a brief introduction of yourself as well.
Okay, my name is Lily Oyare. I'm the director founder of Little Hope Inclusive Early Childhood Development Center. We are located in Kenya, Nairobi. We provide quality early childhood education to vulnerable children and children with disabilities of Kibera informal settlement and its environment. I'm the one who leads the team at Little Hope, so thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Lily. We are honored to have you. Veronica, if you could please step in to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. So I work for Site Savers as a technical lead for education. So I support our education projects in East, Central and Southern Africa. So at the moment, that's supporting teams in Kenya and Malawi with early childhood projects.
Excellent, thank you all. And last but not least, Felician, kindly introduce yourself to the rest of us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Annie. My name is Felicia Tulatins. I currently do the country and program manager for Rwanda, but I oversee also programs from DRC, Uganda, and Kenya. So I currently also do the disability and inclusion and advisory for Chance for Childhood globally, but I also do such kind of also advisory responsibilities to Chance for Childhood Rwanda and the region, especially East African region. So I've been with Chance for Childhood for the past 10 years, and you have implemented a number of inclusive early child development projects and inclusive education project-based interventions across East Africa in general. So briefly, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much all for taking the time to introduce yourselves to those who have joined in on this session today. And at this point, we will be proceeding into the business of the day. And so there's no exact format to follow. If you're ready to pick up on the question and start answering so we can have a discussion, please go ahead. And Hannah, if we could move on to the next slide. So here, the first question on today's discussion is just to explore why is the early childhood development period so important for children with disabilities? Anyone among the panel? I could direct it to Ronnie if you'd like to start setting the ball rolling.
Okay, thank you, Annie. So I think from my perspective, from our perspective, early childhood development, it's a period of very rapid development, brain development, social development, physical development. And for me, it's the foundation for lifelong learning. If we don't start as early as possible, we're missing out on opportunities. And we know that the 0 to 5 age range, there's an awful lot of change happening. We need to be working with children, supporting families so that they can develop life skills. And we know that a lot of children with disabilities miss out on that really important period of support and work with their families, work with local systems, education systems, health systems. So it's just really important we focus on that age group, and that we support children in all different contexts to reach their potential, basically. That's a starting point for everybody, but there's so much more to say.
Yes.
Maybe I can add, it also strengthens their communication, their interaction with other children, and it improves a lot. So if they get an opportunity to start school early, then their brains are able to develop to a near functional level. But because a lot of parents go through stigma, they tend to hide children who are able differently. So it is very important. Early childhood kind of makes them grow well like the regular children. So it is very, very important for their communication and their interactions with others, and even for their development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Is there anybody else in the panel who would like to expand more on that question?
Yes, if I may come in, yes, I would just say that early childhood is a very complex kind of approach, which is just multidimensional, because it's the community of care that we bring to the child, where the child is just placed at the center of all the interventions. And of course, with the surrounding like safety, security, and everything. But again, we can also say that it's just a multi-stage kind of intervention that we offer to children, including those with disabilities or developmental delays, in such a way that it's something that starts with pre-conceptional stage, and then during the conceptional stage, and also postnatal or during the infants, until they reach age of 6 up to 9. It depends on different countries. It just happens like that. But then there is nothing like a standalone point in that. So it has to be also interconnected. And you know that what happens to the child in the early years is so critical to the child's development trajectory and life, of course. And early childhood development is just a key social determinant of health, especially lifelong health and well-being and achievement. but also when you only look at the education kind of pillar of early childhood development services, you would just see it as the very single most powerful factor in reducing the poverty that is always a never-ending cycle in the families of children with disabilities. And due to this, if early childhood development services are provided to these very families, it will end up increasing the chances of future economic independence, and also to improve the health, and of course, empower women and girls and those with disabilities to be able to tackle the stigma and discrimination that has always been in the societies of our countries. Over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And perhaps to move on to the next questions, why is play especially important for children with disabilities during their early years? I can direct this question to you, Chris, so you can start to set off on that.
Thank you very much, Chair. To begin with, play is very much important, especially when it comes to ECD of children with disabilities, simply because we know that play makes everyone and every child happy. So for their happiness in the first place, they are always happy as any other child, but also taking into consideration children with disabilities, their health, physical and emotional challenges. It helps to stimulate these children and also help them in their day-and-day growth needs. There are some children, maybe they have some physical challenges. When they're included in the play, they help them physically to strengthen their bodies, but also those that have intellectual and some congenital challenges, it helps them to stimulate their cognitive development as well. And needless to say that in our program, ECD program, we play is making a center point of our activities, whereby we introduced play schemes in the child development centers, the community-based child care centers, where different play materials are being provided, and training is also being provided to caregivers as well as children in order to play and grow together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Do we have any insights?
Yes.
On that?
May I come in? Yes. Thanks, Chair. What I wanted to add on is this, for children with disabilities, especially for them to be able to play, there is no other responsibilities that we should give to the child other than play. And for children with disabilities, for them to be able to play, they just need what to play with and someone to play with, of course. So the material, the equipment, something to play about, and also with. This will make the child be able to play. But again, we need to take into consideration these other children with their different types of disabilities, be it physical, be it cognitive or mental, and disabled children, and this will be affected in one way or the other. Then if a child has physical disabilities to the point that maybe they are made seated in one place, so they need someone who bring the materials, the equipment to play with close to them so that they can play with them. And as the role of play to me, I would say that, when we're talking about the key areas of development of a child, we actually count them as 5 key areas of development. And when we engage children in play, it has to be such kind of playful, structured, to some extent maybe informal or non-structured, but sometimes we need to make sure that we structure it in such a way that it's beneficial to the child with disabilities, to the point that to help the the physical development in terms of both gross and fine motor functions, but also it has to be directed in such a way that it will help develop the sensory skills, be it the hearing, the vision, the taste, the smell, the touch. And we often tend to forget the balance kind of sensory skill and or body awareness or proprioception. So those two are key when we are involving children with disabilities in play. And we also need to make sure that in such structured kind of play activities, we need to make sure that the brain, the cognitive skills are also being developed in terms of thinking and problem solving skills. Because, you know, when we are playing, we're teaching children with disabilities to play, we need to make sure that we bring in those components, because they will end up needing these thinking skills and problem solving skills in their day-to-day lives. And also they will need communication skills well developed. So communication should also be kind of put into play when children are being sensed or encouraged to play in such a way that children will be able to be channeling or sending messages that are clear, and also they will be in a position to be able to hear and understand others' messages. So just to finish, I would also say that, you know, it improves social development in such a way that the interaction and social understanding sometimes in the grown-ups, you might just see it as an issue, because people tend to use what we call like not acceptable ways of engaging in the community, or others will tend to display acceptable ways of engaging themselves within the community, because the play has taught them about this. So it's good that we structure the play in such a way that it just stimulates children's abilities to bring up communication and social behaviors that are accepted within the communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Felicia, and very interesting perspectives on the aspect of social development. Is there anyone else on the panel who would like to chip in a little more on this?
Yeah, I could add something to that, and thank you, Felicia. And you know, I agree with you very much so. And I think one of the challenges that we have, that we're often working with people, parents, families who don't really understand, even teachers, who don't really understand the value of play. So it's about us understanding and supporting our partners to understand the value of play. I liked what you said about the problem solving, the physical development. And I think another area that is really important is imagination. And we can tend to forget that bit, and because it's not so easy sometimes to think of how to create situations where a child can be creative or can use their imagination. And then there's also the very practical side of things. You know, we can structure play situations, for example, using household utensils, where a child learns daily life skills. So they're learning how to hold things, how to stir, how to bang a pot if that's what they want to do. So there's that sort of it's creating opportunity for children. Sometimes open-ended opportunities where you just give them things, they can do what they want, but then also, as Felician said, sometimes very structured activities where they're learning, and that could be things like daily living skills or modelling of day-to-day life. It's a really good opportunity for children to see how people do things, how things are done in life, and then those skills can be applied in real life situations. So really, just to continue from what Felician said, it's absolutely vital for children, and we need to encourage play, because I think in quite a lot of the contexts where we work, people tend to focus on learning to read, learning to write, and miss the really important developmental stage, sort of pre-literacy skills, pre-numeracy skills, the learning that you need to do before you even think about learning ABC. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all. Lily, I've seen you've unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead.
I wanted to add on what my colleagues have also said. It builds also play builds self-esteem in children with disability, and it gives them that confidence, you know, because for us, we've seen that because we have children in our setup. It's an inclusive setup. You find them thriving to run, thriving to speak, thriving to, do things like the regular children. So this one promotes their self-esteem and self-confidence. And we've seen a lot of progress. So play does a lot of things. And also it teaches the regular children to work around children who are able differently. And it brings such a beautiful picture when you see them being able to solve problems. There's that imagination, they tend to work very well in a group. So play does a lot of development when it is done for children, both children, regular and children who are able differently. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all so much. Really excellent insights across the board. And perhaps, Lily, while we were still speaking about that, we can go on to the third question, which now looks at how parents can be supported and take an active role in the early years development of their child. If you could set the ball rolling on that.
For us, what we did like now, when we set up our structure, we're just giving early ECD to regular children. And then this parent walks in with a child who is able differently. So there was so many things which we had to restructure so that this child could be able to fit in. And we discovered that for a special need child to be able to gain their milestones, whether it is in health, whether it is in the physical, whether it is in the academic, the education, that the parents and the teacher and the school must work together with the therapist. So those three people must work together so that this child gains a lot of milestones. And then there's a lot of awareness which needs to be done to the parents, because most of the parents don't know what has happened to them. Because there's always that picture at the back of their mind that one day they'll wake up and their child will be able to speak, their child will be able to walk, their child will be able to be a regular child. And that is something which takes a long time. So you find there needs to be a lot of communication between those three people, the therapist, the parent, the teacher, and also the child.
Excellent. It's a triple responsibility. Are there others on the panel? Felician, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for me, my understanding about early childhood development will start when the child, before even conception, like I said earlier. So due to this, then I think that the family life or the parents' life before the conceptual stage will also have an outcome or an impact on the child's life. And due to this, we think that parents are the most important influencers on the child's health or life, because they are like providers, teachers, readers, and even guides. So, if parents are well empowered, then children will have like a good or better life. And also by saying this, I want to say that parents need kind of an integrated kind of a training or support for the parents to be able to provide integrated ECD to their children or support to their children. And by integrated support, I want to mean that, parents need, for instance, to be supported in terms of sexual and reproductive health, because they need to know about biology, healthy relationships, sexual health. And also they need to know about sexual reproductive health services in terms of family planning, child spacing, disease prevention, STIs and everything, and the treatment. But also they also need to know about SGBV, sexual gender-based violence, because it has also an impact on the child's life. And again, they also need to be trained about the maternal and newborn health services that are available, like prenatal services, and skilled birth attendants that need to be around when they are giving birth, and also how to support the children soon after birth. So all these kind of maternal and newborn health services, they need to be brought into for the parents to be aware of during their HCD or their support to their children with disabilities and or without disabilities. But also I just want to mean that when parents are also being talked about the ECD services, they also need to kind of have skills from, if the service or the knowledge they want to get is provided at the ECD center, they need to get services about the cookery kind of skills or cooking skills, parenting skills, and maybe like positive parenting sessions, all these, because they will help, parents get to understand what is it that is in need to support their children grow healthy and become who they are created to be. So they also need like social support, because, I told you about the never-ending cycle, poverty, disability cycle, and among so many families. And if there are no social support to support these families, then the parents will hardly be able to make it happen. And something very important we don't have to forget is that there are times when the parent has also disability. There are times when the parent is also disabled. I'm sorry to use that term, but in that case, then we need to make sure that the parents is also supported to be able to support their child in the ECD age. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose the only, sorry, Annie, I'm just really interested in Felicity. And I suppose the only thing, I agree with you, all the issues you've raised about sort of sensitization, training, providing appropriate information. But I suppose the thing that I would also add is about creating space for the parents of children with disabilities to speak to each other. And you mentioned that really, but about support, so that there's some support provided for children and the parents of children with disabilities or persons with disabilities themselves, to talk about the challenges that face them, to talk about the barriers, but to talk about the rewards, talk about the positive things as well. So again, I think it's very important for parents to have this space where they can talk about things in a secure environment, in a safe environment. Because some of them, many parents are facing quite severe challenges, and just talking can be really, really helpful.
Excellent, thank you. And not to cut you off here, Chris, would you like to come in or?
Yes, please. I just wanted to add, I think the previous two panelists have rightly put it. And in the end of it all, what we are saying is that a parent is the custodian of each and every child. And without them taking active role in their child's early development, then we can't really achieve anything meaningful in the life of the child. So central to this will be mostly is supporting the parents to understand mainly their role in the child's life. Most of the times here in Africa, because of our culture and tradition, we usually put each and every care of the child in the hands of mothers. But for us at FEDOMA, what we are trying to do is to promote this kind of engagement from both parents, the father and the mother, and we are going further to engage the entire community to take active part in supporting the education of the child with disabilities. And we have done that. We have done this just as other people have already said, setting up parent support groups, whereby we have built their capacity. In terms of what other panelists have said about supporting them financially or socially, we are promoting village savings and loans amongst the parent support group, so that these parents are economically stable, but also are able to economically be empowered. And over and above that, we are also ensuring that through these parent support groups, these parents are emotionally and psychologically supporting each other, as we all know that disability carries a lot of negative connotations and stigmatization. So there are some parents that they do have negative attitudes towards their own children, but through these groups, their attitudes are being changed, and emotionally they are being supported, and then they end up being supportive to their child. So for us, and in Malawi, we feel that yes, parents, they have a very big role to play in the education or development of their child. But they are, as parents, they also need to be supported through various means, as I have already explained. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And just to move on to the next question, how can we identify children with disabilities that require further support in their early childhood development? And so maybe just briefly to go through that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think I can go first, taking a lessons from what we have been doing. As we were starting our program, just as an example, we had a challenge whereby in most of the ECD centers, you would literally not find a child with disability. But the question that we were asking ourselves was, is it that in this community there are no children with disabilities? No, the children are there, but they were not being taken into the child development centers, but also maybe some of the parents will not even understand that their child has a particular kind of disability. A lot of parents, they thought, or they do think their child is primarily sick. So after carrying out a number of community awareness and sensitization activities with community leaders, as well as some extension workers, government extension workers, and including some parents, we started getting in a lot of children with disabilities coming for assessment through the structures that we had set up. So first is at least create this kind of awareness, and then put in place a mechanism to identify children and refer them for relevant services that the particular child needs. But also, as we strengthen this kind of identification and referral system, here in Africa, our government systems or social service system are always constrained because of the finances. So what we've been doing at FEDOMA is we have been coming in to bridge where these challenges have been. For example, we have our healthcare system within a district or a community. They have an outreach program to go out in the outskirts, in the remote areas, to provide particular services, for example, rehabilitation services or physiotherapy services. But most of the times, they can be planned maybe bi-weekly, bi-monthly, but because of transportation and other logistical challenges, the experts could not go into the community. So what we have been doing sometimes is to support the team with the transportation so that they can get or they can reach into the community and provide the services. So that's just in a nutshell in terms of how we have been able to identify children and bring them into the ECD centers. Thank you.
Brilliant, Chris. Thank you. And could anyone else briefly just come in on that before we conclude on that question?
Yes. I just want to add on what my colleagues just said. Yeah, in addition to the awareness raising campaigns within the communities, we also need to make sure that the community is made aware of the risks to developmental delays and or disabilities. Because, you know, if we are on raising awareness about that disabilities is just this, you need to reduce the stigma. Yeah, we need also to add this information about what are the risks and unknown causes. And after doing that, then we need to make sure that just because the child is exposed to the risk does not necessarily mean they will develop disability or developmental delays, but they need to know this message. And one key message actually two messages that I wanted to give here is that during the first 3 years, even the child that is typically developing might have disabilities or developmental delays soon after. So mainly disabilities. And in general, programs that start early and they are targeting families and the children, and they are very structured and they are intensive, those ones are the most successful ones. And with this, we need to put in place the system about screening or identification of children with disabilities or developmental delays, because this system will help us come up with those children who do not have signs and symptoms, but because they are exposed to risks, we'll be detecting them as early as possible, because this will be considered as the first step in a more complex assessment system or process. And then in addition to this risk identification will help us prioritize those children who need to be monitored, those who need to be referred, and those who need to be intervened on. And with that, we'll be able to deal with this. So how do we do this? There are so many questionnaires, but Washington group questions are part of this. But also, because ECD talks about those children that are from 0 up to 8, 9. So, and Washington starts at 2 years of age. There is what we can do for the 0 to 2 years of age for us to be able to identify this. So there is an experience of what Chance for Childhood has been doing in Rwanda by using the 2012 WHO report. So with screening tool that we've been able to use in Rwanda, and it's really helping people get to know what it is that they can deal with during the ECD as a risk to development delays and disabilities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and very nice to see your actual on-the-ground experiences reflecting in those practices and procedures. So just moving on to the next question, also in the interest of time, so we can cover as much ground. We do know that sometimes in terms of programming and having programs, some of them can be derailed due to lack of political will. And so what are the most effective ways to advocate to governments to increase the rollout of early years development programs?
I'm happy to take that one, but probably Christopher is probably the best person to start, as he works for FEDOMA, who do a lot of work on advocacy. So Chris, I'll hand to you, and then I'm happy to follow up.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, for us to be able to move on very well in terms of bringing in comprehensive ECD services to children with disabilities, there are a lot of work to be done in the area of advocacy and lobbying from the government to ensure that there is that political will, but also an affirmative action to support the services. So as FEDOMA, what we've been actively engaging the government and other ECD service providers. We started with influencing the policy change and policy implementation, such that at the moment here in Malawi, there is a policy review of the ECD policy that was there, but also there's a development of a specific act for ECD. And all that has been possible through various engagement meetings with government officials at national and local levels. And in addition to that, we have also been providing technical input and technical support to the government team. Sometimes the lack of positive implementation, the lack of political will comes in simply because most of the government authorities, maybe they don't have, or they have little or no knowledge about disability inclusion. So most of the times we've been providing the technical support, and we have been affirming our presence to support whatever initiative the government brings in to support children with disabilities or persons with disabilities elsewhere in the country. In addition to that, we have tried to set up community structures. Some of them, they were already put in place by the government. For example, we have what we call village development committees and area development committees. Such structures were set up by the government, but what we did, we tried to lobby and advocated that at least such committees should have a person with disability, so that can provide proper technical advice and support whenever there are issues to do with service provision to any person in the community. So because of that, we have seen that the way some of the community-based childcare centers have been built recently, they have been inclusive. For instance, I'll give an example of one of the biggest projects that Malawi government is having, which is being supported by the World Bank. They are constructing community-based childcare centers. And initially, the way these CBCCs were planned, they were not accessible for children with disabilities. But through our team in the district, the team that is present in these development structures, they influenced the change of the designs and the architectural designs of these structures, up to the point that currently we are celebrating that almost all these CBCCs are inclusive of children with disabilities. So briefly, I think that's what I can say as of now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can just add something short. I'll be as quick as I can, but just to sort of say, I think Felician mentioned right at the beginning that, you know, we're dealing with complex systems and they're different in different countries that we work with. So I think a good starting point is to actually sit down and work with stakeholders to develop a really clear advocacy strategy, a really clear advocacy plan, clear messaging, so you know what you're looking for. And again, I think following on from Christopher, you're looking at different countries. So in some places, it's really important to work mostly at national level, but in other areas, regional and local level, it's really important to try and influence there. And you're working to strengthen systems. You're not working with individual organisations. So it's always about trying to refocus on that. Provision of evidence is really important. So, for example, in many of our projects, we do costing studies so that we can try and influence government and say, look, this is how much inclusive education costs, because there is a bit of a misunderstanding about the cost of inclusive education. So it's that thing of collecting really strong data and evidence, really being clear about what you want to advocate for, and then bringing in the right people to do that advocacy, because, for example, organisations like Fedoma in Malawi do have the ear of government. So, you know, it's sensible to work with the people in the right positions.
Thank you, Ronnie. And Felician, did you want to come in?
Yeah, if it's not too late, say.
No, it's fine. You can just briefly take us through your points.
All right. So I just want to add, I mean, they have just almost said it all, but I just want to add the fact that when I like what Ronnie just talked about, working at the national level, but also in the community, at the community level. because when we went in the community to kind of identify children with disabilities, we also identified those structures, be it the private sector, the media, the NGOs, the development partners, but also academia. Like, we were able to identify those so that whenever we are working, we are intervening in those areas, we will intervene with them. Because so many people are there and they want to support children with disabilities, but very few of them know what to support them with. So we provided that information for them to be able to support children with disabilities at the community level. But also, it doesn't end from there. We generated evidence of what works and what doesn't. And from there, then we kind of set up at the national level the technical working group, the ECD technical working group. And we had different representation from the different line ministries and different partners. So those ones were like the key advocates for either the policy, the strategies and whatnot, for it to change and accommodate all the needs of children with disabilities and the services that are meant to be provided to them. So that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I can also add, a lot of people, we did first to demystify what is ECD. When they hear ECD, they dismiss it. They're saying these are young children. So what is there? What can they offer us? So first is to just bring the awareness to the government officials, and then ECD is multisectoral. For it to work, the Ministry of Health must be involved, the Ministry of Education, the social services, food. When you think of all these things, these teams must work together. So first is just to engage the government and tell them that these are some of the policy. For us here in Kenya, we have come together as stakeholders of ECD, and we are now working. We have divided ourselves into teams. So we are coming up with policies which are beneficial to the ECD. But we are now not speaking alone as, education, because when you talk of ECD, it is standing out as only education. But it's not about education, it is about the development of this child. So we are saying, let us be open-minded to work together. And with these policies, we are seeing a lot of strides towards achieving the SDG goal of education, and also the inclusion, children who are able differently are now being included. You find schools and hospitals are able to have ramps, they have translators who are able to interpret for the parents who have children with hearing impairment, and also for parents who are going through the same disability. So you find now people are aware, and the inclusion is working better, because now everybody is like, okay, can I learn some sign language? And for us now, sign language has become the third national language. So you're finding that when the government is enlightened, then they are able to move things positively towards the people or children who are able to different.
Thank you all so much. And so I see that we only have a few minutes left. So because we have already highlighted some challenges as we were unpacking on some of these questions, I will skip this question on what are the challenges, but we can perhaps just all quickly look at what role do organizations of persons with disabilities play in advocating to governments about the importance of inclusive ECD and play. So if we can just quickly go through that before we conclude.
As we're all quiet, I'll start. But just to say that I know as Site Savers, we work really closely with organisations of persons with disabilities, because we're talking to experts there, and we're working with people who understand the context. They understand things much far better than us. So I suppose something that Lily said, it's about making sure that we're clear about what inclusive early childhood education actually means. So supporting, sometimes maybe providing some technical support around that, maybe providing some technical support around what advocacy looks like, how you can advocate. But really, it's about supporting the work that OPDs already do and understanding the value that they have in engaging with government. So I know, for example, we've done some work in Kenya with some local organisations of persons with disabilities, and they're now contributing to the country development plans, and they've managed to get themselves positions in important committees because they need to have a voice that can be heard. So it's about getting positions on PTAs, on government committees. We were speaking to some OPD members a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they said was that their engagement with government has improved because they're now seen as people who have a value and contribute important learning and understanding of children with disabilities, rather than being seen as people who made noise. That was the way that they put it. So I suppose it's work, again, it's always this thing, isn't it? It's working together with relevant stakeholders, with families, listening and understanding the systems that exist and how different stakeholders can become involved to make this team that actually does have influence.
Yeah. I think what Ronnie said is just so important. Just to add on her words, I would just say that, you know, what I've seen in Rwanda and Uganda and DRC, but not so much in DRC, is that these OPDs were closely working with the development partners in the domain of disability and inclusion, because, you know, the fifth approach defining disability says that nothing for us without us. And there is no way that we should say that we are doing disability inclusion or work without getting them involved. And during this kind of involvement of them, they need to make sure that the package that is delivered to the community is just inclusive in terms of what they would really want to be, how they want it to be packaged for it to be kind of channeled in the community, so that be it those with hearing impairments, physical impairments and whatnot, are able to kind of receive it as their own messages, not as a message from those without disabilities coming to kind of instruct them on how they need to do things. So we've seen it work in Rwanda, because there is no single kind of a project that we have ever implemented without their involvement. And this has helped us kind of having our voice heard more than it would be heard if they were not involved. And also in these technical working groups I've been talking about, we sit on those technical working groups with them. And whatever we say, they also need to make sure that they understand it within their disability movement, so that they can just say, yes, it works for us. So that's how we see it work here.
Just to add before you close, I would want, what for us has also worked is just using the children with disability. Like now for us, Melody has become an advocate of children with disability, and she's been able to go out there. We started with her when she was 5 years old. Now she's 20 in college. So she's now able to go to those meetings. She's able to go to the media and say, this is the challenge I'm having right now in college. So what can the government do so that I can be able to work well in college, achieve my goals? So with that, we have seen a lot of changes. Like now from where we are, the area we're working with, she was able to also go to the area MP. They had a conversation. She said, I cannot be able to do my choral speaking engagement because all the time I have to be carried to the stage. So with that, she was able to change the narrative. All the schools which are being built now, they must have ramps. If they don't have ramps, they have toilets which are adaptable to children who are in wheelchair. So with that, I think we'll be able to move steps, making sure that we use the parent. Like now, Mama Melody has become a champion, Because of that, she's able to stand up in meetings and say, this is what I did as a parent to my child, and these are the milestones my child has gained. So it is very, very important for us to use them as champions for the development of, and also for the spaces, so that people are aware. Most of the community are ignorant, even the government. Most of those officers are ignorant. Yes, it is in paper that there are people with disability. I keep on asking myself, why would somebody stand up and say, we are looking for professionals in ICT who are disabled? And they know very well they were not there at the early childhood development level. So where would they come at the level whereby they are experts in ICT? So it starts from the early childhood. So I think we need to go out there and shout and say, hey, there are people who are here who have been forgotten. So I think it will work because our government hears when they see practically. So let's use the good work we've done, the kids who have made it, whether it is from early childhood to primary, let them go out there and talk about the challenges and making sure that the ones who are coming behind get a smooth ride as they are going on, as they are growing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry to cut the rest of you off, but we have run out of time, and truly grateful for all the insights and your expertise that you've shared today. It was a very good discussion, and I have personally learned a lot from this discussion as somebody who is just now entering the sector from a human rights background. So very nice to meet you all. It was an absolute pleasure. And we will now be ending and closing this session of today's Momentum on the importance of early childhood development and inclusive play. We will not have time for any more questions, but if you do have any, just log them into the box, and also look out for the publishing of this session on our website. So thank you all so much, and I do look forward to discussing more with you at a later date. Wishing you all the best in your work.
Thank
you. All the
you.
best.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you all.
Goodbye.
Thanks everyone so much. It was really, really great.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.